Hello and welcome back, everyone, as we are preparing for our second series of the day. Cincinnati Fear look to take on Golden Guardians. And the provisional team that won their first round, Fear, are already getting a lead here in the chat, believing in them. And Magical, this team has had such a surge throughout honestly, I'd say consistency throughout most of the split, but then a surge towards the end, especially in their social media game, in the community starting to really rally behind them and root for them on this route through the Challenger Gauntlet.
Because they ain't no frauds, that's why. Everyone was doubting them because they had an easy schedule to start it all off. And it's like, oh, what happens when they face real competition? You know what happens when they face real competition? They squash that competition. They look good. They are a team. I am believers in Cincinnati Fear. They have shown why there's so much hype around this team.
And you said they're not frauds. I'm going to call you out live on broadcast, Joshi, because I remember you were one of the non-believers early in the season saying, I don't know. I don't think that they're actually
I was right about one of them.
Strong. What was that?
I was right about one of the teams. So Cincinnati Fear was the one that I was wrong about. And it's been fascinating to listen to a lot of players talk about how well Fear have been playing a lot of their early games in particular, and how a lot of people have started putting them up there with the Cloud9s and CLGs as some of the strongest scrim partners to play against. And Fear have just been one of the smartest teams to watch across this entire season so far.
Well, let's take a look at them then, because the roster of the Fear team is one of the coolest parts about them, the story of how they came together. 5 players that wanted to play together. They chose to put this team together. They moved to LA together. They're spending all their monthly stipend on the rent. They are really on that grind to make it to the pro scene, and you don't see this kind of story that often at this level.
Not anymore. This was a story that you'd hear often all the way back in like 2014, 2015.
The original Cloud9 runs, those kinds of things.
The Cloud9 Tempest runs, the TSM Darkness days. That's when you'd hear a lot of that stuff. You don't hear that anymore. So to have a team still going for that and still showing that they can compete with the best of them, that this team, there's a reason to that. Everyone makes arguments like, yeah, this team should be a Challengers team because how good every one of their members are. And there are a lot of people that were saying, oh, this player's not going to do that well. I don't know how this player's going to do. They all have looked good.
And their opponents, Golden Guardians, Challengers, no slouches in their own right. Fear are easy to root for from a fan perspective. They got the narrative behind them, but Golden Guardians, Challengers have had the consistency throughout the split. They have been putting up big performances. And honestly, this is a team I'll be, out myself here. I didn't have high expectations for coming into this year. And Josh, they have definitely proven me wrong. And this is also a rematch of the tiebreaker because these teams were neck and neck at the end of the regular season. So walk us through what happened last time they faced off.
Oh, I don't even remember. I didn't watch the game that was live.
Yeah,
but I remember.
How about I do it?
All right,
yeah,
we'll
you
get
do
this
it,
over
Alex.
Magical then.
All right. I mean, last time we saw, it was unfortunately a very one-sided affair. It was Cincinnati Fear from moment one, absolutely dominating. Granted, you also gave 3 very important champions to 3 very important members of Cincinnati Fear. Faisal had his Olaf, Perry had Wukong, Manui was on Seraphine. All of these comfort picks for them. I think they only had 1 death amongst the whole team in that game, just to show how strong Cincinnati Fear are.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it feels as though Fear have a style that they prefer to play, with those exact 3 champions, right? The Olaf, the Wukong, and the Seraphine. And there's not a lot of teams that can really beat it because Fear have been one of our better team fighting teams, especially when they get all these tools available to them. And one of the things that I thought was super fascinating was actually watching the composition that was being built up by Golden Guardians against this front to back style team. It doesn't work that way, right? You cannot front to back as this Golden Guardians team. They have been so reliant on some of their strong flankers from Young and Concept in a lot of their fights. And this is a situation where it's like, well, how do you actually find a flank against these guys? You have to be blowing up Manui right off the bat, and Fear were constantly positioning to make sure that could never happen.
And this is one thing that we got to praise with Fear as well, is that this has been one of the strongest team fighting teams we have. Their macro is really good, but when they fight, it is always as one cohesive unit.
I will say it was still I think a pretty close game. There was moments like this where Array almost kept them in it, and if those moments go Golden Guardians' way, it's a completely different outcome, and that's what makes me so excited for this next matchup. There's a little bit of history between these two teams. They split their series 1-1 in the regular season. Fear did take the tiebreaker, so that is meaning that in the previous best of 3 that they have already played, we do have a winner from that one. Does that mean that Fear is favored coming into this? I am unsure, because you said the power picks left up for Fear are very impactful. And in a completely different way from Wildcard, Fear do still have certain champs that you kind of need to ban, because it's so hard to play against them. Their style is a little more unique when they're on those picks, but I'm happy that you mentioned Josh. That doesn't mean that's all they can play. They can also find wins on other champions, other styles.
Yeah. And it's been interesting to me to watch kind of the way that Fear have been playing in a lot of their games, because two of the players that I feel like have received less attention coming out here for Fear are Minui and Trevor. And honestly, when you kind of look at how their story has really fulfilled itself, especially with how these guys have been playing as this team that is just coming together and playing for the heart of it, it kind of gives me throwbacks to, I don't know if any of you guys watched the Overwatch Contenders League back in the day when Runaway was the team to really watch. They were the South Korean team that was a very similar thing. They didn't have any money that was coming in, and they were consistently beating some of the teams at the higher levels, constantly asking, where are we going to go from here? And the player that makes me think most of that is actually Trevor, who is 28 years old. This guy is the oldest player in the league outside of Hunter, Wild Turtle, and Gamsu, who have all played in major regions for years.
Yeah, so let's take a look at some of Fear's gameplay throughout the split then. Trevor in particular, we love his story and how he's continued to improve. And honestly, I think him and Minui have turned into a silent powerhouse for this team. I've been very impressed with their play as a duo.
And I think Trevor is one of those players that didn't get a fair shake at the beginning of the split, one, because of his age, but two, because the last time we saw him on Cloud9 Academy, it was an all-right showing, but it wasn't anything to write home about. It was like, he was there, he subbed in, he did all right. But here, we're really, like you said, how he's paired up with Minui, it really feels like we're getting the full extent of the power that Trevor provides for a team.
Yeah, and I definitely am looking forward to how they're actually going to be playing, because it is a very different style between Minui and Trevor going up against Array and Prismal.
Yeah.
Because Minui is this mastermind in making sure that he's actually able to keep himself alive in a lot of these situations. That's why so many of the highlights that we have of him are him getting out with a sliver of HP, him using Trevor's bailout to revive himself with almost no HP left, whereas Array and Prismal, they're just going to jump down your throat. They're looking to kill you straight up. They aren't looking to make these brilliant defensive plays, because they're just trying to go forward every single time. And Prismal, this playmaker from his days as an AD carry, he always goes for wild things, and he either looks, like a bit of an idiot when they go wrong, or he looks like a genius when they go right, because he's always on the very edge of what is possible.
He's always towing that line of aggression, and one of the clips that I picked for later in this, I think will highlight that pretty well. This one was pretty standard. You're playing the Blitzcrank with the Jinx, nothing too crazy. This play as well, Blitzcrank with the Jinx, they just continually hard punish this. This was their last series that they played earlier in the playoffs. But then this one is super fun. It's a classic Golden Guardian setup. Prismal's oftentimes the one going forward. This time they do have some backup with the team, but he'll always go the extra step, man. Prismal will never be happy with just what they get in the moment. He'll go for something like this. They have vision that the blue buff is being taken. He's like, wait a minute, I have Hex Flash. Maybe, just maybe, I can surprise them. No, never mind. He gets out here, but he was so close to getting punished and actually going down. And that is Prismal as a player. He will force everything he can, and it makes it so exciting to watch him. Roll swap from AD carry. I think on support, that playstyle works a little bit better for him. He's said, I'm a dopamine player. He goes for those kinds of things, so... will that be enough to get them the win over Minui and Trevor and the Fear narrative? We'll see. Pick and Ban is ready, so I'm going to pass it over to Magical and Joshi for game number 1.
And we'll see you for halftime, third time show, whatever you want to call it. But here in this game, I'm really excited because last time we saw them, the tiebreakers, I was wrong about the score. It just felt that way because once Fear got control, it was absolutely their game. But this is something that I'm really curious to see how Golden Guardians learned from that game, because I talked about the 3 powerful picks that were left open that Fear played, and there they start off with 1. There's 2. I wonder if they go for the 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe the Wukong is one of the most crucial picks coming out for Perry. Even during his time on Dignitas last year, he was a player that was
There it
known
is, 3 for
for
3.
not necessarily needing to go for all of these more mechanical champions because he was just such a cerebral, such a smart player. And during the offseason, I did an interview with him, and he was even saying there, my goal is to be known as somebody who can build up my mechanics as well later on in the game. But for now, I'm controlling the game. I'm absolutely looking to get every single one of these early objectives set for my own team, and because of that, Fear have been one of the best early game teams around the first Dragon and the first Rift Herald.
Yeah, but here, 3 of those champions, it's 3 for 3 on the power picks, and make it even 4 for 3 because they themselves banned away Xayah, something else that Manui has played very well on when he's not on that Seraphine. So I'm really curious to see what the game plan is going to be for Cincinnati Fear, and there's already one answer, immediately grabbing Jinx and then Poppy.
Oh. Interesting. Very early pick coming through from this Poppy. I hope you actually know who that might be going for, because, I mean, it's probably Faisal or Perry, but so early on in the game, it is okay into the Gragas, right? You do have the good grounding to come out, but very surprised it is coming out this early on. And Fear, I mean, they've been one of the teams that have had a very clear identity that have really benefited from it, especially against a lot of the Challengers team that have come together a little bit later. But this was not something that I kind of had on my bingo card for Fear.
No, neither was it mine. The Jinx, I can make an argument for, right? We've seen Manui play it. Understandable. The Poppy picked this early as well. Definitely interesting to see. And then on the other side, you have an Aphelios Thresh bot lane. Again, this is standard stuff for the most part. The only one that's really throwing us for a loop is this Poppy pick.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I remember seeing any of these players play it was Perry, and the most clear recollection I have of it is when he was playing for Dignitas Academy last year, when he was playing it in the finals up against Team Liquid Academy. And you could tell it was a character that he was not quite as comfortable on, just because he was going for a lot of things. You could feel the nervous energy that was coming off of his gameplay. So I'm hoping that we can see a little bit more confidence coming through, right? And that's kind of what happens when you have been winning so much and not coming in as a substitute, is Perry has had a lot more confidence this year than he has in previous years.
I'm really curious too, because I feel like that could still be for Faisal in the top lane. It really will depend on where that Gragas is going to go. I think if it is going to be guaranteed into the top lane, then the Poppy makes a lot of sense to put it there. But if not, if it is jungle or mid lane, then Perry piloting Poppy works pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, it is worth noting that a lot of our younger mid laners, including Young, because he's younger, is the fact that most of them are not very good at the Gragas mid, right? We saw a copy yesterday playing it, and I was like, ooh, that was a bit of a rough one, whereas a lot of the top laners, all the junglers are much more proficient on this champion. It feels a lot more like something Concept would play, but we'll get back into it later on. Fear are unconvinced it's going to be going towards Concept, as they do have 2 bans, the Garen and the Cho'Gath getting targeted up there. And Faisal, when the Olaf has been banned, has typically most often, I think, gone for the Cassante.
That has been like the go-to for Concepts. He has played that a lot this split, not only when it was really powerful, but even recently for the team. Good front line, as well as having that capability of fighting your opponent. But here on the side of Golden Guardians, 2 mid lane banned. Orianna makes sense. Shochi really good at that champion. The Victor is a bit surprising though, because that's not necessarily just a Shochi champion. When we think Shochi, you think more of like the Tryndamirs, even the Tristanas, Oriannas. He has a very eclectic pick that he has for every mid lane situation. And with Cassante picked here, they were holding on to that final pick for Shochi, and I'm really curious to see what they want to pilot there.
Yeah, it definitely feels as though Young is trying to build towards an Annie, right? These are 2 of the major picks that you can use to really shut down the way that Annie likes to play in the mid lane. But as we do see Faisal going for the Cassante up on the top side, that is very heavily implying that it is going to be Perry on this Poppy, as we're kind of looking at initially.
It's definitely
with both these picks coming through, yeah, I mean, it is just going to be a situation where I'm very surprised by this early Poppy pick, and Perry's going to have to showcase a lot of familiarity to that champion in order to justify it coming through. The last thing we need is going to be Shochi's pick here, and as you're talking about, with both the Orion and the Victor banned, I'm a little bit surprised that it's Talia is the answer here from Young.
Yeah, I am as well, especially now looking at what Shochi wants to play here in mid lane. Can I kind of hold off the Annie? Oh, Annie makes sense.
Yeah. So, Alex, I mean, we're going to be seeing two very different styles coming through from both these teams. Or, excuse me, very similar styles based on what they're actually trying to do, right? Yeah, you have two mid laners here who are just going to go for these really big bursts in a lot of their fights. You have a couple of AD carries who are going to be doing a ton of damage, and then these strong front lines for them to play around. And I feel like that is typically playing exactly into Cincinnati Fear's wheelhouse. They absolutely love playing these just straightforward front to backs. It is something they have built their entire style around so far this season, whereas Golden Guardians, they tend to rely a lot more on their flankers.
Though, granted, Talia can still flank if you want to, but I'm with you. The overall identity we see from both teams really is Golden Guardians playing to the style that Cincinnati Fear have popularized and have perfected throughout this spring split. And I'm curious to see how well they can do that against Cincinnati Fear. Fear being that team that has been touted as the best team fighting team that we've had since Wildcard, having kind of been found out and people knowing how to exploit some of the weaknesses they have in champion pools. Fear has been this consistent team. So as we load up onto the Rift, round 2, Cincinnati Fear, number 4 seed up against the number 5 seed of Golden Guardians Challengers, a rematch of the tiebreaker scenario that they had to suffer in week 7. But only one team will move on. There's more chances for Golden Guardians here to upset and get themselves further in the bracket.
As we take a look at this a little bit further, right, not as likely to have a whole lot of shenanigans as you're always looking for here, Alex, but instead, everybody's going to be trying to create a little bit of vision. Oh, Golden Guardians were thinking about it for a sec. But one of the things that we were talking about, right, Fear has been one of our best teams at controlling Dragon 1 and Rift Herald 1. But Golden Guardians is a team that loves fighting, right? And they are really darn good at it. The fact that they are constantly finding unique angles that not a lot of other teams will go for. And we really have to praise Young in particular for constantly trying to find different angles in and putting pressure on the backline, even on champions that aren't normally good at it.
A little bit of skirmishing between Young and Shochi. Interesting play there from Young. He took a lot of damage for it, but does get vision on parry. A lot of information for Golden Guardians to now play around.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, Young traded back a fair amount. Talia's early game is not particularly exciting. You really rely on trying to outrange a lot of characters, but because they just stand on the other side of the wave, it's hard for Talia to get a lot of damage down with that. But it's not as though Annie's early game is super exciting either, right? You have these fairly long cooldowns at the beginning. You only get a stun every 4 spells, and so it's oftentimes difficult for Shochi to create these strong early lanes. You're mostly relying on having this long auto attack range in order to punish Young's Talia early on in the game.
Bot lane, Ray and Prismal get the upper hand over Manui and Trevor. Looking at how Ray has been this split, he's kind of been this player who hasn't gotten enough glory. It's Prismal and Young getting a lot of the attention, but Array has been doing his job perfectly, which is every single fight, he's in the right position, especially his Aphelios. We looked at the last series against AoE and how he played that one. It's hard for them to really do much against him, because he knows exactly where he has to stand and then has Prismal to keep him alive further to pump out damage.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to watch as he was one of those members of the 100 Thieves Next class who has been sitting in the Golden Guardians ecosystem basically ever since, in the Academy and now in the Challengers. And it kind of feels in a lot of ways, I've heard a lot of comparisons to Spawn in the past, right, as a player who is kind of doing a lot of things just a little bit faster in terms of his actual career. I feel as though Array can definitely have some big moments, and it's not as though Manui and Trevor are this unbeatable bottom lane laning duo for Array and Prismal, and I feel as though there are still opportunities for Prismal in particular to try and make some fireworks happen.
Now Rosethorn has stuck his way into the spot lane. Perry is nearby. Looking to see possibly a lane gank there. They have the Lantern. That's one of the nice things about having Thresh on your team. You can kind of hang out right outside of vision, dive into a fight, but he's going to back off from this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Rosethorn was a player, kind of like Mir, that we were oftentimes looking to be very aggressive early on in the game, right? Rosethorn, when he was still in the CLG ecosystem, was one of the players that was constantly trying to play towards players like Dokla, trying to find these early Wave 3 dives, but that has calmed down quite a bit. It feels like Rosethorn's game has become a little bit more stable, a little bit more variable as well, and now he's trying to find Perry, who's going for a potential dive of their own.
It was one of the things that Rosethorn utilized well in the spring split of last year. Why CLG had gotten first place in the academy.
Oh, he missed.
I do like that one. Looking for the play onto Trevor. It'll be fine. He's out of there. Two flashes bone. But going back to the point with Rosethorn, like, they got first place, right? In the split last year in spring. But then when it came to Proving Grounds, that's where we saw a lot of that aggressive
Big
plays from Rosethorn getting punished heavily. I think that caused him to have to regroup and recontextualize his gameplay, and where he then went down to CLG Faith, and we saw a lot more of that cautious gameplay during his time there, and we're seeing that continue here into the season.
Yeah. We'll see what kind of cautious gameplay Rosethorn is actually able to have success with this time around, because Fear is a team that is very decisive in everything that they do. And one of the things that we will oftentimes see is typically sometime between 5:30 and 6:30 on the clock, you will usually see a ton of action coming through. Trevor will move towards the mid lane, they will push things out, and then after Shochi gets his back off, they will typically start looking for this first dragon. And that's been something that's been very easy to identify as concept.
Okay.
That's level
Concept
6.
Getting level only 5 and still having that great trade against Faisal. There it is, level 6, but no mana. Not really gonna fight back against Faisal when you can't pump out spells you need.
Everybody's going to be backing away, but Faisal a little bit more confident to stay on the map, and here we go. Fear is already starting to set up a little bit towards his bottom side of the map, but Rosethorn is beating them to the punch as Perry's still hitting the Gromp.
This is, again, where we look at the growth of Rosethorn as a player and how he has come from the player that got dropped in the spring split, even after finishing first in the regular season of spring 2022. Now back in the Challengers ecosystem, performing very well. But here, I like this. The proactivity from Perry does get the flash out of Young.
Yeah, and Perry still has a Hex Flash available as well. Fear now moving down towards the bottom side of the map. Rosethorn has completed the recall. And Fear, they're sticking around a little bit. They're keeping Shochi pushing in mid, and they don't have priority bottom lane. This is actually a little bit surprising. This is usually the window where Fear actually go for the dragon. And as soon as I say that, they start pulling because their bottom lane is now neutral again.
Yeah, they already got the TP out of Young and making that play for Perry. We were just praising Rosethorn, but Perry as a jungler, how much he has learned just in the short amount of time since we saw him last year in spring, to his stint in Dignitas Academy, where he went all the way to the finals with the team, having subbed in, to this year.
Rosethorn has no smite.
He has looked so good, and even getting Rosethorn to flash out of the pit, so they should be able to secure
yeah.
play from Prismal. It does take down Perry, but it's traded back. 1-for-1. Wait, it's a double kill for Prismal in this fight, as they got out of there for now, but it's going to be Trevor who will fall, giving Array his first kill.
What a wild fight that was. Rosethorn smites Tibbers before going into the fight. Ends up being a 3-for-1 in favor of Golden Guardians. Yes, Fear is the one who walk away with the dragon, but wow, what a crazy one. The big thing here that I was looking at was, one, Rosethorn has no smite when he actually goes in for this, but Young, at the same time, he called out the play from Prismal. Young also lands a 3-man seismic shove, a huge stun, followed up into the play afterwards. The Nui's damage is just not coming out for such a long time as Prismal gets the last auto attack. A third kill goes over to Golden Guardians. This one goes over to, I believe it was Array, in order to make sure that they can get the most effect out of those kills.
I mean, I'm a fan of the supports get all the kills, except in that regards right there. That was a good play from Golden Guardians. Getting gold over for Array, making it so that this is a point of power that we've talked about beforehand. Array and Prismal. Array has been this unsung hero for the team. Prismal makes the flashy play. Same with Young. The huge seismic shove in that play that you called out, Josh. But Array is someone that they could always rely on. The consistency he has as a marksman and having him get this extra gold lead will help out a lot. But right now, mid lane, an attempted play onto Young, who didn't have flash. You like to see it out of Fear, but they still couldn't capitalize on actually getting the kill.
Yeah, there's another smite from Rosethorn onto the bear, but it is Golden Guardians who are constantly reacting to what Fear are doing. They go for a gank mid lane, then they start going for the dragon. They go for a gank mid lane, now they're going for the Rift Herald. Faisal has a bit more priority, but Rosethorn has ultimate.
Oh, and Array is here. Array has passed all the way up. That's the flash in, but it's on
Herald.
to the Herald, not onto the members you want. Getting a little bit of damage. Putting down the turret. Is going to be green and purple. They've got the damage onto Trevor. Toppling him down is Young, and they can kite this one back, but they got to be careful because his rate is so low at the moment, and he is vulnerable. But a huge explosive cast from
And the hook.
Another hook! Prismal cannot miss, and he is funneling gold into Array. And with all out, Faisal gains a little bit of distance, but Prismal, oh man, you know he wanted to continue fishing.
Another 3 kills going over to Golden Guardians in that fight. Fear, they set up for both objectives. They get both objectives, but it is Golden Guardians out fighting them every single time. And this one, I mean, it starts off, it looks pretty decent. They find their way onto Array, but there's no follow-up damage, and it is just a single kill. And from there, it's like, how do you actually do the damage necessary to take this down? You don't. You have to pick one direction, and a big cast. Boom! Knocking them all back. There's nowhere left for them to go. The hook from Prismal is enough to pick up another one, and they're just scattered to the winds, all 1v1, trying to find their way out.
It was a perfect cast for Concept. How beautifully it split up the entirety of Cincinnati Fear so they can collapse on that play and get more, like I said, continue to funnel gold into Array. It's 2, 0, and 4. Look at that. Young, Prismal, and Array are all the same.
All the same, Array getting very close to that first item, Bloodthirster, and Prismal, I mean, just accelerating so much with the amount of gold, already up almost 1,000 over Trevor. This is a fantastic showcasing of what the strengths of both teams are, right? Fear setting up for these objectives. They do a good job. Unfortunately, not getting the kill on Young either time as they go for these early ganks, really hurting them because he's able to stay alive and participate in the upcoming fights. And Golden Guardians, I mean, again, they are fighting so well. Prismal's finding some crucial abilities, and Young just withstanding all the pressure that he knows is coming his way.
Josh, you know the term Pyrrhic victories, right?
Yes.
Definitely had 2 of those now for Cincinnati Fear, where they were able to sure win because they get the objectives, but really they lost because how much they bled for it.
Yeah. And, I mean, it's a gold lead going over to Golden Guardians. Typically the way that you would oftentimes play in previous seasons, right? You would give up 2 dragons in exchange for about 2,000-3,000 gold, and that was usually considered better for the gold. Now they're already up that, and they're only losing 1 dragon. We'll see if Fear can kind of bounce back now that they are behind so much money for this next dragon. It is going to be, oh, I actually don't know what it is. Either a Chemtech or a Hextech dragon.
It's
Chemtech.
Chemtech, yep. So
here's Young.
Pathing down with Rosethorn, they put a lot of control into Perry's jungle. They're afforded these liberties because of these plays that have benefited both bot lane and mid lane. Now in control of Golden Guardians, where Shochi tries his best to clear out the minions, but it's so difficult up against Young, but also up against the Talia when you have a Vi that always can show up and gank mid lane with how immobile you are as Annie.
Yeah, classic combo. Trevor's caught.
He has flash. Okay, it's going to be the seismic shove that gets him out of the death sentence. Trevor will limp away.
Yeah, that's going to be Golden Guardians going to be equalizing on dragons here, unless maybe we can go for a crazy steal with the rocket. But only criticism there is Golden Guardians, for such a classic combination, they were unsure how to actually chain the crowd control. They will give up a little bit of gold with this Rift Herald in the mid lane. Plate goes over to Perry, plate goes over to Shochi. They're going to be getting a fair amount of gold back for that. So ultimately, kind of an even trade.
Kind of an even trade, but still, they at least even up the dragon so they don't have to worry about that being a fallback win condition for Cincinnati Fear, because now it's going to take so long for them to even click close to Soul. And being a Mountain Soul, it's even more important for Cincinnati Fear to survive a lot of that burst potential you have from Young.
We'll see what they can do, right? Young still has a lot of items left to build before they're even that true damage threat, that true damage carry, that first mage that we were talking about in comparison to the Annie. So, I mean, it's kind of been interesting to watch Young as a player, because Young is a player that I wasn't super excited about going into this split. Partly because we didn't know what the situation was with the LCS team, but ever since I started playing here in Academy, it feels as though they've been playing with nothing to lose. That's even with what they've been saying. It's just like, yeah, I don't have the same kind of pressure on me here in the Challengers League as I did in LCS. This just feels like a glorified practice environment for me to find my way back.
Especially as the only true rookie of the team. The rest of the team, Golden Guardian Challengers, being either in their sophomore year or having just an extra year on top of that of experience. Like Prismal, he has the most, but he's also been role swapped. Now mid lane, I do like this to look for Fear, immediately pulling the trigger to get the shutdown onto Young. But going back to the point I was trying to make, like, you have a little bit more experience on the side of Golden Guardian Challengers. While Fear, this is a team of all rookies that have had a slight experience here and there, like Trevor subbing in. But you can see, just as this rookie squad, that when they get ahead, how powerful they are, as well as how they work as a team. But here's where you get the experience that overloads them sometimes, where they get caught out. They try to look for a play, but Golden Guardians capitalize.
And it's looking really good for Golden Guardians, right? That is the third time that Fear have tried to dogpile onto Young in the mid lane. It's the first time that's actually succeeded. He's done a fantastic job at withstanding pressure there. Golden Guardians, they trade that kill. They get one onto Trevor, and they also get the bottom lane turret. That's so much money that Array has picked up. Already has the completed Bloodthirster, already building towards the Infinity Edge. And as the play shifts towards the top side once again, Golden Guardians are going to be first to the punch because they just have so much more money. Every single person has already finished their Mythic, including the support, because of the number of kills Prismal has picked up.
Man, we talked about this before, what meta we're in. Yesterday we had some throwback drafts. But look at Perry. First item, Naphthalmos chains. I'm guessing that is chained to Array. Nice try. That is chained to Array, because Array at the moment has 100% kill participation. And as you called out, you know, with Bloodthirster soon to be that IE, it is going to be so difficult for them to actually burst down Array. And if they don't burst him immediately, he'll heal up so quickly that you're never going to get a chance again.
Yeah. And, finding Trevor?
It's just Trevor, though. Even with the box put down, Rosethorn went over the wall. We'll give a love tap. And here's Young, surfing his way into the mid lane.
Oh, he got bounced over the wall. Did you see that?
What the world? Oh, yeah, from the... Oh, he
the Leo wall knocked Rosethorn over.
I saw that, too, and I thought it was just like a weird animation from his Q or something. I'm like, oh, that's weird looking.
That was funny.
Yeah, I guess Rosethorn wanted to surf on the wall as well, and then go for an invade afterwards to try to take away blue buff from Shochi. But he has that lantern, but the Vault Breaker's enough. Flash away from Inui to survive from Concept. He was afraid that he could get blown up by Gragas.
Yeah. And it's definitely a situation where I feel both these teams, right? Like, there were a lot of people, myself included, who were rather convinced that Fear was going to end up being somewhere in the middle of the pack, right? And Golden Guardians was a team that people weren't necessarily super excited about. As another hook from Prismal.
Another hook from Prismal as Faisal gets the flash. That's going to be a depth charge on Array, but the turn's already been taken. A nice hook again onto Trevor with the flay as well onto two members. Pulled back in. Not confident. Fear, even though they had the advantages, some of their members that are critical were too low on health.
Yeah, and it's going to be at the perfect time coming out here for Golden Guardians. They can take control of all his vision, set up for the upcoming Dragon, and Rosethorn trying to stop a couple of backs. I don't know if Perry didn't see him or didn't believe him, but that is some nerves of steel to not even cancel the back.
He had confidence. He was like, yeah, whatever, you can't stop me. I'm getting pretty tanky at this point, so it's going to be difficult for you and you alone to silence me. But still, it is looking really good for Golden Guardians, and as a team, I want to go back to the point you were talking about, where not a lot of people talked about them the entire split. But then we started seeing about halfway through, slowly but surely, they were working their way up the standings, looking better and better with every single day. And they ended up getting all the way to the 5th seed, having been in the bottom half of the standings for most of the split.
Yeah, honestly, the fact that they find their way back was kind of the nuttiest thing for me to watch with Golden Guardians as a team that, again, nobody was really like, oh yeah, Golden Guardians are going to be the best team in the entire league, but they find their way up, just like the LCS team alongside them. And Fear, the other one, right, that we always have to talk about as a team that was, you know, they did really well early on, and their early schedule was pretty darn easy. They had almost all the other provisional teams that they were beating up on at the time. But then they started taking games off of teams like the Team Liquids, the Cloud9s, the CLGs, and it's like, okay, all right, these guys need to be taken seriously because, yeah, they beat the worst teams, but they're also beating the better teams.
Fear, know that you're beating them in the regular season. Regular season is so different from how playoffs are, right? You go into a higher stakes scenario where there's so much more pressure. And for a lot of rookie players, that can be a daunting task where you're now asked to outperform, and all these other players who you can see from Golden Guardians have been having that resurgence in the standing and are very confident with their play. Right there, Young again. How many times has he been looked at by Perry, and yet only has fallen the one time.
That's at least the 4th that I know of. And now Golden Guardians, I mean, they're still trying to push up in the mid lane. I think it is worth noting that the last time these guys played each other, I mean, there was obviously the tiebreaker, but before that, they hadn't played each other since week 1 of the regular season, where they actually traded games. And I think that was one of the things where people were kind of looking at, like, oh, okay, Fury kicking 1, and now Golden Guardians, they're starting this fight off 5v4.
2 TPs. They're having a lot of people join this one. Minui is going to be the one member not there, looking for the punch away. It's only going to connect onto Prismal. They've got Shochi going golden to survive the best he can, but he's in danger. And look at Array's untouched. Array's got the guns. He's focused everyone. He's in the middle of it on. He is not afraid. The rampage of Array continuing to wail away on Fear with a double kill. Looking for Shochi and Perry at the same time, because they've got everything Golden Guardians could possibly want.
Array just walking up into the middle of the enemy team. Concept goes in.
Concept goes in. Concept goes out because he dies to Shochi underneath the tower, but they get Minui for it. And then Shochi too. He's not long for the world. He dies to the death sentence damage.
Oh my god, another great fight coming up from Golden Guardians. We said that these guys like to fight. They are damn good at it. 6-0-5 Array. Going to be finishing his second item before the 21-minute mark. Already has the Infinity Edge completed. Young still up here picking up another turret. They are just constantly looking for every single one of these opportunities to go for it, and it is absolutely a pleasure to watch.
This is the problem. What do you do against Array? If you can't burst him, and he survives, he'll heal up enough, and he can go right in the middle of everybody and be perfectly fine.
Yeah, I mean, it was a 5v4 to start off because of how far away Minui was. It was a great read from Golden Guardians, but once the bear is used, once Shochi has no damage left, it's like, what's the threat here onto Array? There's not a whole lot that Perry can do. He's got the life steal to get through at least one member. You got to dog pile onto him, and so even when the stun comes through, that only prevents Array from getting the kill credit onto Perry. It doesn't stop him from already being a monster. And the concept, yeah, overestimates a little bit of his damage, but ultimately by keeping everybody here, it ends up being worth it. The only real criticism from that is like Minui a little bit slow on the cleanse, but ultimately not a whole lot left. Put that leash on the child and take him for a walk.
Getting all this gold for Array too. You talked about it, I'll talk about it. He only has 1 kill now that he hasn't been a part of. The Array, the unsung hero of Golden Guardians, now we are singing his praises as he rightfully deserves, because he has been given everything in this first match in a best-of-3 against Cincinnati Fear.
Yeah. So Array, this is the kind of game as an AD carry you start dreaming of, because the people that are normally supposed to be a threat to you aren't really threats whatsoever. And Golden Guardians, they have such good vision control here. And they look for Trevor and they get him.
Trevor flashed away, Spider-Man out. They can continue to chase us, getting the flash as well to pick up the kill.
Yeah, but at least they get him at the very end, and they can just go right on back. Array has so much life steal that between these guys...
Would it have mattered if they got him or not? Because he would have been too low anyways.
Well, I mean, it's gold. Kill is a kill, Alex.
No, okay, you know what? Using my own logic.
They fight Perry. It's the exact same play.
Look at that seismic jump, and even using the explosive cask as well. Perry doesn't fall nearly as fast, but he eventually does die. All out on the other side. Gets a trade back. Jungler is gone for Golden Guardians, but Array is not. And Array is hungry, flashing to be godlike. It is Array's game to win, and this guy holds no thing back.
Oh my god, all of the early plays, all the team fights that Golden Guardians go for time after time are paying off, Alex. Array is so goddamn fed. 8-0-5 at this point. They're doing the Baron. They've started up 3 times. They've gotten picks every single time. The Fear is trying to come over to contest it, and this is fantastic. This is perfectly the way that Golden Guardians love playing all these games. They should be able to go over towards the Dragon as well. We'll take another look at it, right? They had already picked off Trevor from Fear trying to contest this one, and then after that, Prismal, exact same plays, exact same idea. They come in trying to take down Perry, and the only silver lining that you get coming out from Fear is the fact that Faisal rips Rosethorn out of the fight, takes them down, but Array just does so much damage. Look at what's happening. His shield never breaks fighting Minui.
The fact that he's just that fed, right? Nothing can touch him. There's no burst, incapable. Array knows it too. That's why he's stepping so far forward. Look at him right now.
Oh.
He doesn't even need the defense. He's just like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm cool. I'm legendary. What
Oh no, Sochi!
Oh no! Perry, you betrayed Sochi!
Alley-oop with the wrong direction. There's another one going over here. Trevor's not going to be able to execute, will he?
Yeah, no.
No. Oh my god, it's just a devastation fight at this game. This game has been over for a while. It's all on Golden Guardians to close it out. They're going to pick up another dragon for themselves, but Array is in the mid lane.
I like this. Watch out. It's Roastler, the player who had been forewarned. Warned to scorn the enemy. FF before you have to mourn. You are warned, but you're still chased to stand up. You still chase to stand up to the Bjorn, and now you'll be torn by the mighty Rosethorn. Nicely done, Captain Asian.
Thank you, Jeffrey Huang 11. We'll get back into it, as it is definitely Golden Guardians. They are running through this game at this point. There's not a whole lot that Fear have left in the tank. Maybe if Manui can find like a crazy fight, but it doesn't feel as though Golden Guardians are giving any opportunities over. They've already exposed 2 inhibitors. They're going to pick up one. They can move over towards the other. They don't even need the minions.
It's a
Prismal, I mean...
Oh, it's
okay.
10k gold deficit, and Trevor, you got hit by the bank right there. Array's just got too much damage, and they can continue to kite this one. Array's in the middle of everyone. Untouched, uncaring about what you throw at him, even all out. It is not stopping him getting the damage, looking for the quadra kill, hunting this one down, but Perry scares him off with the keeper's verdict. But it doesn't matter, because this game is Golden Guardians Challengers, unless an absolute miracle can happen. Perry and Faisal, the last one's in the base, but they don't have any damage to stop them. Weaver's won't stop it, and game 1, the Golden Guardians Challengers.
13-0-5 on Array in that first one, Alex. And you said that Filesley went all out to try and take him down. He's going to have to go even further beyond if he wants to do anything. It was an absolute blowout from Golden Guardians, and I love the read that they had on that game. They knew what the Fear game plan was. 6:30, we're going to hit the dragon. Or we're going to gank mid, then we're going to go hit the dragon. After that, right after 8 minutes, we're going to gank mid, we're going to go to the Rift Herald. And Golden Guardians fought them at one, they fought them at the other, and they blew them out of the water in both fights.
Golden Guardians did their research this time around. They banned the champions that we were praising Cincinnati Fear to pilot so well. They made sure that like you were talking about, those plays that normally we see set up by Cincinnati Fear were calculated, and they could easily rip them apart at those moments. They take this convincing game 1. We're going to toss it to a break, Josh, and we'll come back with Kangas for our halftime or third time show. Depends on the results of game 2, so make sure you stay tuned.